Sam and his underwater lies. I think for me, the hardest part of falling for a romance scam wasn't the financial loss. It was the fact my emotions and my heart was played with. I met Sam on FB. I met him on a page dedicated to photography of churches. I guess there's a group for everyone, and I have a love of photography, and especially Gothic churches and other old world church buildings, especially those in Europe. I often shared, posted, and replied to comments and discussions in this group, so it wasn't unusual for me to be extremely active. In fact, I had one of those top fan badges next to my name, and every Friday I would post my favorite pictures and take part in group polls and surveys, etc. Sam replied to my post of Gothic church photo I posted. He said he liked my post and found my profile picture to be intriguing. At the time we had started talking, my profile picture was of me, but I was in my Halloween costume and I was dressed as a Gothic princess. He told me that my picture looked smart and fun, and he asked if we could chat in private. I told him it was fine to go ahead and send me a message. I often had private chats with people from this group about photography and travel to Gothic churches, so I didn't see any harm of inviting him to chat to me. He introduced himself to me in private, stating he was 49 years old and a Christian who lived in Norway. He said he was divorced and that his wife had cheated on him with her work colleague, and they ran off together, so he filed for divorce. He'd been divorced for 2 years, and he had a daughter named Olivia who was 10 years old, and that his wife left when she was 8 years old and didn't want their daughter, so he was raising her as a single father. My situation it was similar, minus the child. I'm 47 and I was divorced 4 years ago when my husband had an affair. I never had kids, but he was cheating on me and it left me scorned. I live in Nevada, and when we started chit chatting, I wanted a cool friend to maybe just share photography with and church ideas and different Gothic churches. When he said he lived in Norway, I asked him about some of the Gothic buildings in his country, as there are a few I've always wanted to see. Sam sent me a paragraph about Gothic churches in Norway. I asked him what city he lived in, and he said Oslo. He told me that he worked supplying underwater cables on a contract for his company. He said he was in charge of a crew who went out into the ocean to inspect and install cables. He sent me several photos of what he says was the ship he had worked on previously, and all the construction workers underwater installing and welding. He told me he'd been doing this type of work for 20 years, and he was going to retire after this year as the job had become more dangerous with accidents and other problems at the company he had worked for. I asked him who his daughter is with when he's working on the ocean, and he said because sometimes he goes out for weeks or a month at a time. Sam told me that his company provides sort of like a child care. His daughter stays in a boarding house of sorts when he goes away. At this time, I figured it wasn't far-fetched, as some companies offer daycare, so the way he explained it was this billion-dollar company that he works for provides like a child care education boarding school for his daughter in the UK. I started asking him about his favorite architect, favorite builder, favorite church, and he would send me these long articles about churches in Norway. Sam asked me if we could exchange phone numbers and if we could add each other as friends on social media. He asked if I had WhatsApp, and I did. And at the time, I didn't see any harm, as I had exchanged phone numbers with people that I'd met in my groups before, and I was even in some WhatsApp group chats about photography, architecture, travel, and churches. Sam and I started texting on WhatsApp. He told me he was getting ready to go out on an underwater cable project in the North Sea. He'd asked if I'd ever heard of it. I told him, yes, I've heard of the North Sea, but I'm unaware of how his job actually works or what it all entails. He sent me some short video clips and gave me the name of his company, and he said the North Sea where he was working would be very dangerous, and the last time he was there, they had terrible storms. It was very choppy, and that's why he gets paid so much money because he works in such dangerous waters with his crew. We would text a little at a time when we first started, and then it was more often. It was like a slow but steady increase in chats. From hello, how are you, and good morning to thinking of you and asking about my day and sending me emojis and roses and really nice romantic things. We exchanged some photos, and he asked several times for photos of me. He said he wanted photos different from what was on my social media. And I think maybe that was his way to check on me to make sure I was real. And in exchange, he sent me several photos of himself, his daughter, and both him and his daughter together, and short video clips of him at work. Now that I look back, the questions that he asked me were probably red flags, but at the time, I didn't see them as such. He asked where I live, what I did for work, if I owned or rented my home, and during this time I thought he just wanted to get to know me. Sam started to tell me more about his wife and her infidelity, which led to their divorce, and I shared my experience. We had a lot in common, and it was like he knew about my life, and ours was mirrored even down to the small details of how we were treated. His ex wife took the car and left him with the car payment. My ex husband did the same. It was like in my vision, I had met the male version of myself, and I felt like he really understood me. We really started to connect based off our ex experience, and we liked the same things as well. He told me songs that were his favorite, and they were also my favorite. TV shows, culture, everything. So even though he was a world away, he felt like he was my twin. Sam called me a few times as he prepared to get ready to go back out to sea, and his daughter by this time was back in her boarding school thing in the UK. He told me that the connection would be spotty while he was at sea, but he would try his best to call me when he could. We were sort of like close friends, maybe talking about meeting and getting together. He told me he started having feelings for me, and he was very convincing with his words. He told me he felt this deep connection to me because of our past relationships and because of our like for music, movies, food, and more. It really did seem like we were bonded somehow. Sam left for his work and said he would be at sea for probably 6 weeks. After that, he would return home to Norway, and we toyed with the idea of meeting in person after he was home and settled. I'd always wanted to see the Norwegian churches, and Sam said once he got finished with his contract, he wanted me to come and visit Oslo. We went as far as going over the details of the trip and how I insisted I would stay at a hotel near his home and keep things relaxed and see how it goes. I didn't feel safe or comfortable staying at his house, and we agreed that would be okay. I set my boundaries. I would come visit for maybe 2 weeks, and I had asked Sam several times for his address so I could maybe scope out some hotels near his house, and he never gave me that information. We would keep talking, and as it was if he was too busy or his connection would go off every time I asked him for his address. And now by this time, he was on a floating rig and the ship had dropped him off somewhere at the construction location. The ship would come back in 2 weeks to bring supplies. He said the waves were very rough and he sent me several videos and photos of the ocean. Our conversation, though, started to become more distant and I became worried. My insecurity of being cheated on had my mind swirling, and I asked him if he was on the rig with women or just men. It had me thinking some crazy stuff, and I decided to confront him. It's part of my baggage. He told me there were only 11 men and him on the rig. No women work out here as it's not allowed due to the danger. And he told me honestly that he was just embarrassed and that's why he was being distant because he forgot to load his phone before he got on the ship and he was so preoccupied with my questions about his address and meeting and hotels, he forgot to load his phone with Apple cards. He told me he was running low and he asked if I would be able to buy him a $500 Apple card to load his phone and he could pay me back once he got back to Norway. That he felt so stupid for not getting the card before going, but he was so excited for me visiting and it just distracted his mind. While the amount was a lot, I halfway felt guilty of accusing him of cheating and being around other women and for demanding his address. Which, after I bought him the card, he gave me his address in Oslo. And I, of course, checked it out, and it led to a very beautiful home. So I started looking for hotels near there, but from what I could see, the home was by the water and the nearest hotel was a bit of a drive. But I started doing research. The home he said he lived in had a neighboring home for sale for $7 million. When I asked him about this, he said his job pays very well, and his contract right now is going to pay him $30 million once it's completed, due to the danger of being in the North Sea, and he's supervising underwater cable installation. It's one of the most dangerous places on Earth in terms of waves and storms. He kept telling me he couldn't wait for us to meet, and I started feeling out of his league. Here I worked a kind of a low paying job compared to him. I worked for an insurance company as an adjuster. 30 million is a lot compared to my 40,000 a year. It was amazing to me as I never met someone with such a dangerous job. Sam was so thankful for the Apple Card that he said he was also able to call his daughter at her boarding school to check on her as well. He said she was very sad as she missed being home in Norway, but he had told her about me and how I would be coming to visit them. When I asked her how his daughter felt, he said she was so excited to meet me as she longed for a mother. I told Sam we need to see how things go, but I was excited to be part of his and her life. We talked more often after he was able to get the card from me, but he told me he was spending a lot of minutes calling his daughter's schoolminder as his daughter was having problems in school and she just wanted to come home. Sam had by this time made it halfway through his contract, and he said the waves and storms were so intense and several pieces of equipment had broken, causing delays in finishing the work. They were waiting for the ship to come, make it out to bring them food and supplies, as they couldn't get out of there due to the storm, and he again sent me videos of a stormy sea. He didn't talk to me for a full 2 days, and that was unusual. My messages were sent, but I don't think he read them. Sam then texted me to tell me some important equipment that he had not secured during a storm had broke, that the company found him at fault because he should have been supervising his workers and he didn't check their work, that they didn't secure the equipment before they took shelter on the rig to ride out the storm. He said $10,000 in damage was done to the equipment, and he was on the phone with his boss who demanded he pay up front for the damage or they would cancel his contract and he would lose all of his pay. Sam asked me if I could get him another $500 Apple gift card, as he was running low on time on his phone due to arguing with his boss that they still haven't received their supplies and supplies were running low. They were starting to share food. He was confused and didn't know what to do. His workers were getting angry as well due to low food and no pay yet. His boss was holding their pay until Sam paid for the damaged equipment. He kept telling me, "I'm so confused." I bought Sam another Apple Card and he thanked me so much. He told me he's never had a trustworthy partner he can depend on, and he was absolutely adoring me. He kept telling me as soon as he's off the rig, he's going to collect his contract pay and quit his job. He even asked me to come live with him in Norway and sent me informational websites on immigration to Norway and how we could marry. He did, though, bring up in every conversation how his boss was pushing him for the $10,000 in damages. He said he was able to raise 3,000, but he was $7,000 short, and that he was able to make a loan transfer of $3,000 to his boss, but his boss demanded the other seven, and if he didn't get it by Friday, he wouldn't send the supplies and he would cancel his paid contract. Sam was beside himself and said he didn't know what to do. I told him that's not legal, and he said I did not know Norwegian law, and he was in the open sea. I told him I don't know labor laws there, but I do know that they can't abandon workers on the sea, and maybe he should contact someone like a Coast Guard or the media and turn his boss's cruel intentions in. Sam told me not to worry, and he would work things out, and he just bid me a good night. I didn't hear from him that next day, and I became worried, but I also knew there were storms and times he wasn't able to contact me due to the network being so poor. Sam finally called me, and he was upset, saying he was so confused that his boss fired him and refused to pay his bank account for the contract and refused to send the ship to take him and his workers home or even give them food and supplies. I told Sam to call for help, send a mayday. He said the weather was too bad and they were all huddled in their rooms. The workers were angry and Sam had to lock himself in his room. He said he was afraid and his boss is demanding the 7,000. Sam asked me if I was able to get the money, so his boss will release him and the workers, and then once he gets to Norway, he's going to sue his boss for unpaid work. Sam begged me for another Apple Card, but this time just $100 one so he can put calls out to his daughter's school and let them know that the company has his daughter at the school and that they had made threats to evict her from the school as the boss paid for her to stay there as part of Sam being employed. He said everything was falling apart and everything was getting worse. I got him another card and I told him I would try to do what I could. He told me that I was the only person who could help him, and I was the only woman who was faithful and genuine to him. And he knew that I was his soulmate, and we belonged together. Sam would call me every couple of hours asking if I was able to come up with the $7,000, that his daughter was being taken out of boarding school and he didn't know what would happen to her. I told him surely the school would not throw an underage child out of school without her parent coming to get her, and I told him not to worry, just focus on getting home. Sam called over and over again, crying, saying he was so confused, he didn't know what to do. His phone calls came more and more frequently over the hours, calling me in the middle of the night, during the early morning, daytime, you named it, he phoned to check on the status of me getting the money. And if he wasn't phoning me, he was sending text after text. He was wailing and crying by the second day. He said he couldn't get a hold of his daughter. He said he tried calling the school, but they won't answer, and he didn't know what to do. He asked me if I could call the school, and I asked him for the name of the school in the UK, but he just gave me the number, and it was a UK country code. He told me I could call it on WhatsApp and call the headmaster, but he thinks they're blocking his calls. I told him I'll try, and I ended up calling the number, but it just rang. I added it on WhatsApp, and the WhatsApp profile was a picture of a school, and it said Unlimited Cable Limited School Housing. I received a text message from that number on WhatsApp asking who I was. I told him I was inquiring about Sam's daughter Olivia, and that he's trying to get her home, but you all are not answering the calls. This person stated to me that their name was Nancy. They were head of the school that Olivia was at, and that Olivia was sent to a detention classroom to sleep and removed from student housing because her father was fired from the company and the boss was no longer paying the girl's schooling, and Nancy said that the company owner will refuse to pay tuition to keep her there. Sam's boss told the school that he was fired due to negligence and to refuse calls from the company phone that Sam had, so the headmaster wasn't answering the calls from Sam. Looking back, this is all so wild and makes no sense, but when caught up in the moment, it really made me believe this poor kid is caught in the middle of this mess. The headmaster Nancy said to keep Olivia in school, the tuition would need to be paid of €2,500 made payable to the school accountant, and that they could keep her in housing until her father comes to get her. I told them Sam was having problems with his pay and his boss has stranded him at sea right now. The headmaster said I could pay the tuition and keep his daughter safe, but if it wasn't paid, they would turn her over to an orphanage in the UK. Nancy gave me the payment information, and I was told to do a bank transfer that equaled €2,500 to a man's account in London. It was a Barclays bank account. I asked if Olivia was okay, and Nancy told me no. She's sick with a bad cold, and they won't help with the tuition. It's not paid. Once the tuition's paid, they could get her some help. I found this to be cruel, but I didn't know how things work in other countries in the UK. I told this Nancy via text I'll send the money now through my bank. And Nancy told me to take a screenshot of the bank transfer so they could process everything, and I did just that. I then tried calling Sam with no reply. His phone would just ring and ring, and a couple times the call was refused. I texted Sam to call me right away. It was about an hour later, he called me. I told him that I paid his daughter's tuition and she's safe. I explained what Nancy told me, and Sam thanked me so much. He told me that Olivia is now my daughter too, and we're family, and he made me a promise that I would always take care of Olivia in the event he doesn't make it off the rig. I told him to stop talking nonsense, but he told me that the workers are getting angry and demanding that Sam pay the $7,000 fee to his boss or else, and he said that the food had run out and he was terrified. I told him I'll contact someone who handles emergencies in the North Sea, but Sam told me not to. That his boss told him if he pays the remaining balance of the $7,000, that he would send a rescue ship and would pay out his $30 million contract. He didn't want to lose, as that would be his retirement money and we could be together. He asked if he makes it off this ocean if I would marry him and adopt Olivia as my own daughter. He told me he's never known a faithful woman like me and I was everything he's always dreamed of. He started to cry to me on the phone, begging for my hand in marriage. He kept saying, "Our daughter needs me to get out of here, and we can live our lives in peace in Norway." Or if I didn't like it there, he would sell his house and come to the States. The manipulation was so real. He kept telling me, "We're so much alike, we're soulmates brought together by a higher power." And I fell for it. I ended up telling him I will pay his boss and asked how we do this. He told me that he would get the information for the company. Then I didn't hear from him for 2 more days. I was worried and he wasn't answering my calls. I then got a text on WhatsApp from a number I didn't know. It was Sam. He said it was him, but his phone had run out of data and he asked me to buy another $100 Apple Card just one more time so he could message and call me. He asked me to text the card to this number, which was a number of a ship helper who wasn't angry with him and was trying to keep the other workers from getting mean. This worker was helping protect Sam as the workers tried to break his door into the cabin, and he was hiding. I ran out and got a card, gave him the number, and texted him. Shortly after, Sam called me and texted me from his regular number. He thanked me and he said he was in a dire situation. I told him I have the money. I took out a loan and had the money for this greedy boss. He said he had it in writing that his boss would pay him once the 7,000 was paid. So Sam gave me the bank information to his so-called boss, which was another bank account in the UK out of London, different bank, and to some other man. I did the transfer and Sam asked me to show him so he could show the workers and maybe they would calm down. I showed him the transfer and told him everything would be okay. I let him know about his daughter and the situation, and Nancy from the school was messaging me. Nancy messaged me after I sent the transfer slip to Sam, and I let Nancy know that the boss had been paid and Sam would be going to the UK to go get Olivia soon. Nancy told me that Olivia had fallen ill and she was very sick with a bad chest infection. I asked if they took her to the doctor, and she said no, as they would need money to do so, that the doctor visit would be €200. I told her it's ridiculous. A child being sick, they should take her to the doctor or call a school nurse, something. Nancy told me, well, I could buy a Visa gift card and load it with $200 and show her the front and back of the codes on the card and the numbers, and she will process an online payment to order the doctor clinic to see her. That the daughter was very sick. I went out and bought a vanilla Visa and gave Nancy the number and the card once I activated and loaded it up. She texted me that she took Olivia to the doctor and got her medicine as she has an infection. I let Sam know as well, and he said he was trying to get off the ship and that his boss has not sent help. By this time, things were falling apart again. He said his boss was now blackmailing him and was going to report him to the safety authority for underwater cable negligence if Sam didn't pay his boss an additional $10,000 in hush money. I told Sam this is absolutely ridiculous and he needs to send an SOS for help. And he told me no because he had cut corners during the construction and didn't get the right permits. And it was his fault for not taking the correct steps, and he just asked me to send 10,000 to his boss to keep his boss quiet. I told Sam I don't have that kind of money, and Sam started telling me stories of how his wife betrayed him and how he was so hurt that I was doing the same. I told him I didn't betray you. I'm spending thousands and spent thousands of dollars in Apple cards, paid his daughter's tuition, doctor visits, and paid his boss off, that he needs to step up and call for help. He told me that I turned his back on him and I was no better than his ex-wife. And he then stated that I was cheating. He accused me of it. I told Sam he was absolutely ridiculous and I've never cheated on him. We had this heated argument, and he told me I'd abandon him and that he would rather be with his ex wife than someone like me, such a horrible woman. And with that, he blocked me, and he blocked my social media. I was dumbfounded and hurt. I remember crying my eyes out, shocked at how he could flip the switch and turn so cruel. I ended up trying to call Nancy and text her to see if she had heard from Sam, and after a night of crying over him, I then tried the number of his friend who texted me from that one time, but I was surprised when someone picked up. It was a man who said his name was Thompson, and that Sam and the crew were all taken off the rig, and he didn't know where Sam was. He said I hurt Sam so badly that he heard Sam say he was going back to the airport and going to meet his ex wife. I was even more upset by this, and Sam's friend Thompson then asked if I was single, and he texted me his picture. And I told him no, please have Sam call me, I'm sorry. Thompson told me it was not his business, and he blocked me too, and told me that I wasn't interested in him, so it was done. I just felt so strongly about Sam and the relationship we had, despite him accusing me of cheating, that I researched his address. I was going to try and find out if he had a home phone number or some way I could reach him. I just felt like love doesn't end that quick. Upon research of the address to his home, I was able to find a phone number connected with the address online, and I called that number. I probably ended up sounding like a lunatic, but I spoke to a woman named Sophie who spoke English, but of course had an accent, which was not the same kind of accent Sam had. I explained the situation I was in, and she told me no one named Sam or a child named Olivia had lived there, and that her and her husband had lived in the home for more than 20 years, and prior to that, her husband's family owned the home and it'd been in their family for generations. They didn't know of a Sam anywhere in the area, nor a child named Olivia. I felt she was genuine, and she did take the time to speak with me on the phone. I started to research the company he said he worked for and found nothing. No information. By this time, I was wondering what was going on. By chance, the name of his company did come up on a message board dedicated to romance scams, and the name of the company had been used in 2017 in a scam, and this woman had told her story of a man she had met named Michael who used this company name and had taken her for several $1,000s, claiming he was captured by pirates while off the coast of Somalia. This was all so strange, like small pieces of a puzzle. The boarding school was next. I searched and found nothing. Nancy's number, though, from the boarding school came up on a website which talked about romance scammers, and it was flagged as being used in a scam. Totally different story, different name and photo, and wasn't Nancy. The number was used by a so called soldier named David who was in Afghanistan. I felt like I was peeling a rotten onion, and every layer was a scam. I reported the accounts to the fraud department of their respective banks where I sent money. I was given case numbers, but nothing more. I posted on my social media about the incident and made my post known to my friends so they were aware of what happened, as I wasn't ashamed, I was angry. Shortly after that post, I received a message from one of my friends. I think I met him in the photography group. His name was George, and he told me that he knew Sam. Now, George had been on my friends list for a couple of years. He was someone looking back I friended but really never spoke to. I asked how he knew Sam, and he told me that Sam was his brother. Sam never mentioned a brother, and this George told me that Sam had been arrested when he landed in Norway, and that he was being held as his boss had turned him in for negligence on the sea, and he needed to pay the Norwegian government 50,000 euros in fines, and that his daughter was put into an orphanage, and that he didn't know what to do as Olivia's mother had turned her back on them again and was cheating on Sam again. By this time, I was sick over this. I accepted I was scammed, but who was this George? And then it hit me. I think George was Sam. George had been on my friends list silently for a few years and watched me, my posts, my life unfold. And then he created Sam, who became my perfect man. And because I got to know Sam, it seemed like everything that I liked, he liked. He would say his favorite song, and it was my favorite song. I think he absolutely watched me for all this time and then created Sam, my perfect man. I immediately blocked this George and then combed over my friends list and deleted a few more suspicious people that I didn't really know or talk to. I have no way of knowing if they were all the same scammer or if people I deleted were scammers too, but if I didn't know them, I booted them off my friends list and I ensure my posts are to friends only and I know who my friends are. I don't post to groups much anymore since this incident. I get friend requests from tons of single men, mostly widows, who want to get to know me. I never had this happen before. I paid back the loans and financially recovered, but emotionally, I sure didn't. It took a lot from me, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust anyone again. These scammers take more than our cash. They take our trust, caring nature, and take away our hope that there are good men out there. I hope one day I find Mr. Right, but I can tell you the Mr. Wrongs are coming out of the woodwork on my social media. Ladies beware, gentlemen too. That's my story. Thank you. We'd like to thank this lady for sharing her encounter. Unfortunately, scammers do create watcher profiles where they send friend requests to you and you accept them and they stay silent. They observe you, get to know what you like and don't like, and then create the perfect partner to try and romance you. And all the while, they continue to get to know you with their silent profile. Beware of who you accept friend requests from. Sometimes the silent friends are the most dangerous, as their knowledge of you is powerful in winning you over in a romance scam. And remember, you don't have to friend somebody to chat with them on Messenger. Until next time, stay safe. And if you'd like to share your encounter you had with a romance scammer, you can find us scammingscammers@gmail.com. We're also on FB, Scamming Cyber Education. Our inbox is there. Any screenshots, share your story. We can verify it and narrate it into a video. Your story may help others heal from their romance scam or may help them to come out and share their story. Take care.